most of human history, no one asked why humans looked different. Skin color was simply part of the landscape, like mountains or rivers noticed but rarely questioned. Early humans did not wake up wondering why some people were darker and others lighter. They were too busy surviving. Hunger, cold, predators, and distance shaped their days. Appearance mattered only insofar as it helped or harmed survival, and for tens of thousands of years, darker skin was not a disadvantage at all. In fact, it was protection. The story begins long before cities, before writing, before names. It begins in Africa, where modern humans first evolved under a brutal sun. The ultraviolet radiation pouring down from the sky was relentless. It damaged DNA, destroyed folate in the blood, and threatened fertility. Dark skin, rich in melanin, acted like a natural shield. It absorbed radiation, protected cells, and preserved life. In this environment, lighter skin would have been a liability, not an advantage. Those with insufficient melanin suffered higher rates of illness, birth defects, and early death. Evolution responded silently, without intention, favoring darker pigmentation again and again. For tens of thousands of years, humanity remained dark-skinned. This was not ideology or identity, it was biology responding to environment. The earliest humans who left Africa carried this darkness with them, moving slowly into the Middle East, South Asia, and eventually beyond. They did not leave in a single wave. Migration was gradual, fragmented, and often accidental. Groups followed animals, seasons, and water. Some returned, some vanished, some adapted. At first, nothing changed. But then the world changed around them. As humans pushed farther north, the sun weakened. Seasons grew longer. Winters darkened the land for months at a time. The same melanin that once protected life now blocked something essential. Vitamin D, produced when sunlight touches the skin, became scarce. Without it, bones softened, immune systems weakened, and childbirth became dangerous. Children suffered deformities. Adults lost strength. Survival quietly tilted against those whose skin blocked too much light. No one noticed the cause. There were no scientists, no doctors, no explanations. Only outcomes. Children with slightly lighter skin absorbed more sunlight. Their bones grew stronger. Their immune systems held. They survived winters better. They reached adulthood more often. They had children who inherited similar traits. Generation after generation, these tiny differences accumulated, not because anyone chose them, but because survival filtered them. This is how humans became lighter, not suddenly, not intentionally, and not everywhere. It was not a transformation, it was a drift. And it happened painfully slowly. For thousands of years, populations in northern latitudes hovered in between, not dark enough to thrive under weak sun, not light enough to fully compensate. Diet mattered. Those who ate fish rich in vitamin D could afford darker skin longer. Coastal populations adapted differently from inland ones. Culture, food, and environment all interfered with genetics in complex ways. There was no single path. Some groups lightened quickly, others did not. Some populations remained dark despite low sunlight, supported by diet. Others evolved lighter skin rapidly when diet failed. Evolution did not care about appearance. It cared only about reproduction. And even then, light skin came with costs. Lighter skin increased vulnerability to sunburn, infection, and later, cancer. In environments where sunlight returned suddenly, during summers or migrations, damage accumulated. Pale skin was never perfect. It was a trade-off. Yet over time, in certain regions, the trade-off favored survival. This is the moment where myth begins to creep in. Because long after biology completed its work, humans began telling stories about it. But those stories came much later. At first, no one noticed the change at all. Early humans did not track skin tone across centuries. They did not compare ancestors' faces to their own. Change happened below the level of awareness. A slightly lighter child here, a slightly darker one there. Over thousands of years, averages shifted. By the time farming began, skin differences were already visible across regions, but they still carried no meaning beyond familiarity. People looked like their neighbors, that was all. Then humans stopped moving. Settling down altered everything. Agriculture locked populations into specific climates. People could no longer follow sunlight or seasons easily. They were born and died under the same sky. This intensified selection. In northern regions, light skin became increasingly advantageous. In equatorial regions, dark skin remained essential. The split widened. Still, no one called it identity. That idea had not yet been invented. The first civilizations rose without racial concepts. Ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and early China recognized diversity, but did not organize society around skin color. They cared about class, language, religion, and power. Appearance mattered less than allegiance. Even in ancient art, skin tone varied naturally. It was descriptive, not symbolic. The transformation of skin color had already happened biologically, but socially, it was still meaningless. This is a crucial truth most people never hear. Humans did not become white in order to rule, dominate, or separate. They became lighter because sunlight changed. Everything else came later. Yet history would eventually reverse the order of explanation. As populations expanded and interacted, differences became visible across borders. Trade brought people face to face who had never met before. A merchant from the north encountered a trader from the south. Their skins differed dramatically. Questions arose, not hostile at first, but curious. Why do they look like that? Why do we look like this? Without science, humans filled gaps with stories. Climate theories emerged. Gods were blamed. Some believed the sun burned people darker. Others thought cold bleached skin. These explanations were crude but not malicious. They were attempts to understand a visible mystery. But curiosity can harden into judgment. As societies grew complex, explanations grew moral. Difference stopped being neutral. And this is where the story turns dangerous. Because once humans began attaching meaning to skin, they stopped seeing it as adaptation and started seeing it as destiny. That shift did not come from biology. It came from power. But before power could misuse skin color, the groundwork had to be laid through misunderstanding, distance, and silence from science that had not yet arrived. By the end of this era, humans had already become lighter in some regions and darker in others. The physical transformation was complete, but its interpretation had not yet begun. That reckoning would come later, when empires rose, oceans were crossed, and difference demanded justification. By the time humans began to notice one another across vast distances, skin color had already finished most of its biological journey. What remained unfinished was meaning, and meaning, once attached, has a way of outliving truth. As early communities grew into civilizations, humans started to remember not through data but through stories. Oral traditions explained floods, fires, ancestors, and gods. Slowly, these stories expanded to include the human body itself. Why people looked the way they did became part of cultural memory, even though the real causes had occurred far beyond living recollection. In these early civilizations, difference was not yet dangerous. Ancient societies encountered diversity constantly through trade and migration. Caravans crossed deserts, ships hugged coastlines. People with different skin tones, hair textures, and facial features interacted daily. What mattered most was not color but custom. Who you prayed to, how you dressed, what language you spoke. Skin color was visible, yes, but it was not central. It did not yet define worth. This is often misunderstood today because modern assumptions are projected backward. But the ancient world was less obsessed with skin than the modern one. Egyptian art depicted people of varying tones without ranking them. Mesopotamian texts described foreigners by their clothing and speech, not their pigmentation. Early Chinese records focused on culture and geography. Even Greek thinkers, often misrepresented, framed human difference largely in terms of climate and lifestyle, rather than inherent value. Still, ideas were forming. As humans tried to understand the natural world, they looked for patterns. Hot places produced darker people. Cold places produced lighter ones. These observations were correct, but incomplete. Without genetics, without evolutionary theory, early thinkers filled in gaps with speculation. Some believed the sun burned skin darker. Others believed cold drained color away. These explanations were not malicious. They were attempts to reason from limited evidence. But explanation is never neutral for long. Once humans explain difference, they begin to compare it. Comparison leads to judgment. Judgment leads to hierarchy. This process unfolded slowly, unevenly, and often unconsciously. No single civilization invented racial thinking. It emerged in fragments, scattered across time and place, shaped by power, fear, and distance. Distance mattered deeply. When people live close together, difference is familiar. When people live far apart, difference becomes mysterious, and mystery invites myth. As populations expanded, groups grew more isolated from one another. Mountains, deserts, oceans, these barriers limited interaction. Over generations, unfamiliar appearances became symbols of the unknown. stories exaggerated differences. Outsiders were portrayed as strange, dangerous, or unnatural. These portrayals were not yet global, but they planted seeds. Skin color began to slip from observation into symbol. Light and dark, already powerful metaphors in human psychology, attached themselves to bodies. Light meant safety, day, warmth, visibility. Dark meant night, danger, uncertainty. These associations predated skin color entirely, but once applied to people, they gained emotional force. This was not biology speaking. This was the human mind searching for meaning. Still, for thousands of years, these ideas remained loose. They did not define global systems. They did not determine destiny. A dark-skinned person could rule an empire. A light-skinned one could be enslaved. Power flowed through conquest, not complexion. That balance would not last. The turning point was not belief, it was movement. When humans learned to cross oceans regularly, the scale of encounter changed. The world shrank. Civilizations that had evolved separately for tens of thousands of years collided suddenly, violently, and unevenly. Technology, disease, and military power were no longer evenly distributed. An imbalance demands explanation. When one group dominates another, it must justify that domination to itself, if not to others. Moral discomfort seeks relief, and the easiest relief is inevitability. We are meant to rule. They are meant to serve. Skin color offered a visible, permanent marker to attach these claims to. It did not matter that biology disagreed. What mattered was that the marker was obvious. Thus, a profound inversion occurred. Skin color, once a consequence of environment, was reimagined as a cause of destiny. Lighter skin, which had evolved as a fragile adaptation to low sunlight, was reframed as advancement. Darker skin, which had protected humanity for most of its existence, was reframed as primitiveness. These interpretations were not ancient truths. They were recent inventions, shaped by conquest and profit. But they spread quickly. Printing amplified them, education standardized them, religion sometimes absorbed them. Over time, these ideas hardened into doctrine. Children learned them before they could question them. Adults enforced them without remembering where they came from. And so the question changed. It was no longer, why do humans have different skin colors? It became, what does skin color mean? That question haunted societies for centuries. Ironically, during this same period, science was advancing quietly in the background. Anatomists dissected bodies, physicians studied disease, naturalists cataloged variation. Slowly, evidence accumulated that contradicted popular belief. But evidence struggles to compete with ideology, especially when ideology supports power. The more empires relied on skin-based hierarchies, the less they wanted those hierarchies questioned. So early scientific voices were ignored, twisted, or silenced. The body itself protested. Light-skinned settlers struggled in tropical climates. Dark-skinned populations thrived where pale bodies burned and failed. Disease patterns contradicted assumptions. But rather than reconsider beliefs, societies doubled down. They blamed morality, they blamed intelligence, they blamed fate. They did not blame the sun. This refusal to listen to biology prolonged misunderstanding. It allowed myths to solidify into systems. And once systems exist, they reshape reality. Laws, economies, and borders were drawn along lines that skin color never intended to create. At this stage, humans had not just become lighter in some regions. They had become confused about why. The original truth that skin color was an adaptive response to sunlight was buried beneath centuries of storytelling. Few remembered it, fewer still taught it. The irony is painful. The trait that once united humanity under a shared evolutionary logic became the very thing used to divide it. And this division was built on ignorance, not evidence. The problem was never that humans tried to explain skin color. The problem was how quickly explanation turned into certainty. As Europe moved deeper into the age of exploration and early science, curiosity about the human body intensified. Scholars wanted order. They wanted systems. They wanted the world to make sense in neat categories. Nature, however, had never agreed to be neat. Early scientists inherited a dangerous habit from philosophy, the belief that observation alone could reveal truth, even without understanding mechanisms. They saw difference and assumed meaning. They measured what they could see and ignored what they could not. And because skin color was visible, it became central to their theories, even though it was biologically shallow. Naturalists began classifying humans the way they classified plants and animals. But unlike plants, humans had culture, history, and power. Classification was never neutral. Every category implied a center and a margin, a norm and a deviation. The question was not simply how humans differed, but which differences mattered. Skin color mattered because it was immediate. So they named groups, they drew lines, they assigned traits. Intelligence, temperament, morality, qualities that had nothing to do with melanin, were tied to pigmentation by assumption rather than evidence. The logic was circular. People in power defined themselves as superior, then used appearance to justify why power belonged to them. Measurements were taken with great seriousness. Skulls were compared, facial angles calculated, limbs examined, yet the conclusions were often decided before the measurements began. When results contradicted expectations, they were ignored. When they aligned, they were celebrated. This was not science as discovery, it was science as confirmation. At the same time, biology was sending quiet signals that something was wrong with these theories. Variation within populations was enormous. People with similar skin tones differed wildly in ability and health. Traits did not cluster neatly. The data refused to cooperate. But instead of questioning assumptions, early theorists expanded their categories. They created subgroups, mixed types, transitional forms. The system became increasingly complex, increasingly strained, and increasingly detached from reality. And yet it spread. Universities taught it, museums displayed it, governments cited it. What began as speculation hardened into doctrine. The most damaging idea to emerge from this period was the belief that skin color represented a timeline, that lighter skin was more advanced, while darker skin was more primitive. This implied that human history moved in a single direction, with some groups closer to the future and others trapped in the past. This idea was deeply flawed. Evolution does not move toward perfection. It moves toward adequacy. It does not care about advancement, only survival in specific environments. Dark skin was not a leftover from an earlier stage. It was a solution refined over hundreds of thousands of years. Light skin was not progress. It was a compromise. But these truths did not serve empire. Colonial expansion required moral comfort. Exploitation needed justification. Skin-based hierarchies offered both. If difference was destiny, then inequality was natural. If pale skin signaled advancement, then domination was inevitable. Thus, misunderstanding became policy. Laws were written that treated people differently based on appearance. Economies were structured around it. Entire populations were displaced, enslaved, or erased under the belief that biology demanded it. These actions were not driven by genetics. They were driven by profit and fear, dressed in scientific language. Ironically, during this same period, medicine began uncovering facts that contradicted popular belief. Doctors observed that light-skinned individuals were more vulnerable to sun damage, that dark-skinned individuals resisted certain diseases better, that adaptation mattered more than appearance. Yet these observations were compartmentalized. They did not change the narrative. Why? Because science does not exist in isolation. It exists within society, and society decides which truths matter. As centuries passed, the gap between biological reality and social belief widened. Skin color, once a minor adaptation, had become overloaded with meaning. It carried expectations, assumptions, and judgments that had nothing to do with survival. Children were born into these systems and taught them as facts. They did not know they were learning myths. Textbooks presented classifications as natural. Maps reinforced divisions. Language encoded bias. The original evolutionary story faded from memory. Few remembered that pale skin was once a disadvantage, that it required cultural support, clothing, shelter, diet to survive, that without these supports, light skin struggled in much of the world. Instead, pale skin was framed as self-sufficient, resilient, superior. This inversion was complete. By the time genetics emerged as a field, skin color had already been transformed from biology into ideology. Challenging it meant challenging institutions, economies, and identities. Resistance was inevitable. Early geneticists faced disbelief. Their findings complicated simple narratives. They showed that traits were shared, that boundaries blurred, that ancestry was tangled. But complexity is harder to accept than certainty. Still, the evidence accumulated. Studies revealed that skin color is controlled by a small set of genes, that these genes affect only pigmentation, not intelligence or character, that populations labeled differently shared most of their DNA, that migration and intermixing had been constant throughout history. Slowly, the foundations of racial thinking cracked. But cracks do not cause collapse on their own. Belief systems persist long after they are disproven. They persist because they serve functions beyond truth. They organize power, they provide identity, they simplify a complex world. Thus, even as science corrected the record, society lagged behind. The phrase "how humans became white" took on a life of its own, detached from biology. It implied a transformation of essence, not adaptation. It suggested intention, not accident. It framed light skin as a destination rather than a detour. Yet the truth remained simple. Humans did not become white to rule the world. They became lighter because the sun grew weaker. Everything else was added later. The tragedy is that once meaning was attached to skin color, it became difficult to remove. Even today, people inherit beliefs they did not choose, shaped by stories written long before modern science existed. Understanding this history is not about blame. It is about clarity. It is about separating what the body did from what society imagined. When the 20th century arrived, humanity stood at a strange crossroads. Never before had humans known so much about the physical world, yet never had so many old assumptions survived with so little evidence. Skin color remained one of the most misunderstood traits in human history, not because information was unavailable, but because the truth threatened deeply rooted beliefs. What biology was about to reveal would not merely revise history, it would dismantle it. The discovery of DNA quietly changed everything. At first, genetics was not concerned with skin color at all. Scientists were trying to understand inheritance, disease, and development. But as methods improved, researchers began mapping genes and comparing populations. What they found was unsettling to anyone who believed skin color defined human groups. The genetic differences between people of different skin tones were incredibly small. So small, in fact, that they were statistically insignificant compared to variation within the same population. Two people labeled as different races could share more DNA than two neighbors. This discovery struck at the heart of centuries-old thinking. It meant that categories built on skin color had no biological foundation. They were social constructs, ideas shaped by history, not by nature. As scientists looked closer, the story of pigmentation became clearer. Skin color was controlled by a limited number of genes regulating melanin production, distribution, and type. These genes did not exist in isolation. They interacted with sunlight, diet, altitude, and lifestyle. Change one factor and selection pressure shifted. What shocked researchers most was how often light skin evolved independently. Europeans, East Asians, and some indigenous American populations developed lighter skin through different genetic mutations. They were not closely related when these changes occurred. The same trait appeared multiple times in different places under similar environmental conditions. This meant pale skin was not inherited from a single ancestor or group. It was a repeated solution to the same problem: low ultraviolet radiation. This destroyed the idea of a single white origin. There was no ancestral white population spreading outward. There were populations adapting locally, responding to sunlight scarcity again and again. Light skin was not an ancient identity. It was a recent adaptation, fragile and conditional. Genetic timelines reinforced this conclusion. Many European populations did not develop very light skin until relatively late in prehistory. Some groups living in Europe thousands of years ago had darker skin than many modern Europeans. Blue eyes and light hair appeared independently and later still. The image of an ancient, uniformly pale Europe was a myth. The past did not look the way people imagined it. Migration complicated the story further. Humans had never stayed still. Populations moved constantly, mixing and separating, carrying genes across continents. Skin color did not change overnight, but it followed movement slowly. When people relocated to new environments, mismatches occurred. Dark skin in low sunlight caused vitamin D deficiency. Light skin in high sunlight increased cancer risk. Over generations, selection adjusted pigmentation, but only if populations stayed put long enough. Modern migration broke this pattern. In the last few centuries, humans began moving faster than evolution could respond. Pale-skinned populations settled in high UV regions. Dark-skinned populations moved north. Biology could not keep up. Instead, culture compensated. Clothing, shelter, diet, and medicine replaced slow genetic adaptation. This revealed an important truth. Skin color mattered less than environment. Yet socially, it mattered more than ever. Even as science dismantled racial categories, society clung to them. Why? Because skin color had become symbolic. It represented history, trauma, identity, and power. Removing its meaning felt like erasing stories people had lived through. Biology offered clarity, but clarity does not heal wounds by itself. As genetics advanced, public understanding lagged. Scientific findings remained confined to journals and universities. Popular culture continued repeating outdated ideas. Education systems struggled to update narratives built over centuries. The phrase "how humans became white" remained misleading because it implied transformation rather than adaptation. It suggested direction rather than response. It framed light skin as an endpoint instead of a balance. In reality, evolution has no endpoints. Skin color is not fixed. It never was. It continues to change. Studies show pigmentation shifting even within historical timescales when conditions demand it. Humans are still evolving, still adapting, still responding to sunlight, diet, and environment. The body does not care about identity. It cares about survival. Understanding this truth reframes the entire discussion. Humans did not become white in a linear journey from darkness to light. They diversified, they adapted, they responded to geography. The appearance of whiteness was not a goal, it was a compromise with consequences. This understanding also exposes the fragility of pale skin. It requires protection. It requires cultural support. It thrives only under specific conditions. Remove those conditions and vulnerability returns. This is not a flaw, it is a reminder. All traits come with trade-offs. What society once celebrated as superiority was, biologically, a narrow solution to a narrow problem. The final irony is that as humans learned this, many chose not to listen. Old beliefs persisted because they were familiar, because they simplified the world, because they offered comfort in hierarchy. But science does not negotiate with comfort. It reveals what is. And what it revealed was simple, uncomfortable, and humbling. Humans are one species. Skin color is adaptation, not destiny. Whiteness is not an achievement. It is sunlight history written on the skin. In the next part, the story will move beyond biology into the modern world, exploring how these truths collide with identity, memory, and the future, and why understanding how humans became white still matters today. By the time modern humans began building cities, writing laws, and recording history, skin color had already completed its biological role. Evolution had done its work quietly, without intention or meaning, but culture had not. Humans are storytelling creatures, and once societies grew large enough to require order, difference became useful. Skin color, visible and immediate, offered a simple marker. What began as adaptation was slowly rewritten as identity. This transformation did not happen instantly. Early civilizations rarely categorized people primarily by skin color. They identified by language, tribe, religion, and geography. Ancient texts from Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and the Indus Valley describe outsiders, but rarely frame skin tone as destiny. Dark and light existed, but not as hierarchies of worth. The body was noted, not moralized. That changed as global contact expanded. When long-distance trade connected continents, differences became more pronounced. People who had never seen each other suddenly met. Skin color stood out, and where curiosity once existed, fear followed. Fear demanded explanation. Explanation turned into story. Story hardened into belief. The turning point came with empire. As European powers expanded outward, they encountered populations adapted to intense sunlight, dark skin, tightly curled hair, wide noses optimized for heat exchange. These traits, once understood as normal variations, were now viewed through a lens of domination. Conquest required justification. Exploitation demanded moral cover. Biology was misused to provide both. Whiteness was no longer just skin tone, it became a symbol. European thinkers of the Enlightenment era, despite their emphasis on reason, often categorized humanity into rigid types. They ranked populations based on appearance, geography, and perceived intelligence. These rankings were not discoveries, they were reflections of power. The conqueror defined the scale, and unsurprisingly, placed himself at the top. Science was bent to fit narrative. Measurements of skulls, noses, and skin were treated as evidence of superiority. Climate adaptation was reinterpreted as destiny. Light skin, once simply a response to low UV environments, was framed as refinement. Darkness, once protection, was framed as primitiveness. None of this was grounded in biology. It was ideology wearing a lab coat. The damage was immense. Colonial systems embedded these ideas into law, education, and economy. Skin color determined access to land, safety, and survival. Over generations, these structures reshaped societies. People internalized the messages. Whiteness became aspirational. Darkness became something to escape. Yet biology remained indifferent. Genetically, the so-called races remained nearly identical. Skin-colored genes affected only surface traits. Intelligence, creativity, emotion, and capacity were shared equally. But social systems do not collapse simply because they are wrong. They persist because they benefit those in power. Even after the fall of empires, the stories remained. In the modern era, migration brought these contradictions into sharper focus. Dark-skinned populations moved into low UV environments and faced health challenges. Light-skinned populations lived under harsh sun and required protection. Again, culture compensated faster than evolution. Sunscreen, supplements, architecture, and medicine replaced natural selection. This should have been a lesson. It showed that skin color was no longer a survival trait in the modern world. Technology had overridden biology, yet socially, pigmentation still carried weight. Why? Because identity had become tangled with history. For many, skin color represented ancestral suffering or inherited privilege. It symbolized wounds that had not healed. Talking about pigmentation scientifically felt threatening, as if it erased lived experience. But science was not denying history, it was explaining origins. Understanding how humans became white did not minimize injustice. It exposed how arbitrary the justifications had been. This distinction mattered. When genetics entered public discourse, it challenged old racial categories. DNA ancestry tests showed people carrying genes from multiple continents. Families discovered unexpected origins. Lines blurred. The idea of purity collapsed under evidence. Still, resistance persisted. Humans cling to simple stories, especially when complexity threatens identity. Skin color offered a visible anchor in a confusing world. Letting go felt like losing ground. But evolution does not care about borders. It cares about survival. The deeper truth was this: whiteness was never a permanent state. It was conditional. It depended on latitude, diet, and lifestyle. Remove those conditions and its advantages disappeared. Pale skin was not stronger, it was specialized. This realization reframed everything. Instead of asking how humans became white, the more accurate question became how humans adapted to less sun and what they lost and gained in the process. They gained vitamin D efficiency. They lost UV protection. They gained lighter pigmentation. They gained vulnerabilities. Every adaptation had a cost. Modern medicine revealed this clearly. Skin cancer rates were higher among light-skinned populations in sunny regions. Vitamin D deficiency affected dark-skinned populations in northern climates. The body's history was written into present challenges. There was no perfect skin, only trade-offs. As this understanding spread, a quiet shift began. Younger generations questioned old labels. Science education improved. Conversations grew more nuanced. The myth of racial hierarchy weakened, though it did not vanish. The story of how humans became white became less about transformation and more about context. It became a story of movement, of climate, of survival, and of how culture can distort biology into ideology. This part of the story reveals an uncomfortable truth. The greatest damage was not caused by evolution, but by interpretation. Humans did not just adapt to sunlight, they adapted stories to power. And those stories shaped the world. By the late 20th century, something unprecedented was happening in human history. For the first time since our species emerged, evolution was no longer the main force shaping human survival. Technology had taken its place. Medicine, clothing, architecture, and global food systems allowed humans to live almost anywhere on Earth without needing to biologically adapt first. The slow process that once turned dark skin light over tens of thousands of years was suddenly irrelevant. This changed everything about the story of skin color. Genetics entered the public conversation with a shock. Scientists mapped the human genome and discovered that all humans share more than 99.9% of their DNA. The differences responsible for skin color came down to a tiny set of genes, mostly involved in melanin production and distribution. These genes did not cluster neatly by continent. They overlapped, crossed and contradicted centuries of racial classification. The idea of clear biological races collapsed under evidence. A person with pale skin could carry genes associated with African ancestry. A dark-skinned person could have genetic markers from Northern Europe. Skin color, once treated as destiny, was revealed as a surface-level response to environment, not a marker of origin, intelligence, or value. This revelation unsettled many people. For some, it challenged deeply held identities. For others, it threatened social hierarchies built over centuries. Science had not just answered how humans became white, it had quietly undermined why that question ever mattered in the way it did. Meanwhile, the world itself was changing. Global migration accelerated. Cities became melting pots of ancestry. Children were born with genetic lineages spanning continents their ancestors never imagined meeting. In a single classroom, skin tones reflected the entire evolutionary history of humanity. And yet, the environment was changing too. Climate change began altering sunlight exposure patterns. Regions grew hotter. UV radiation increased in some areas. People with light skin living in high UV zones faced rising health risks. Sunscreen, once optional, became essential. Skin cancer rates climbed. The vulnerability of pale skin, long ignored, became impossible to deny. At the same time, vitamin D deficiency emerged as a global issue. Dark-skinned populations living in northern cities experienced higher deficiency rates due to reduced sunlight. Doctors prescribed supplements, fortified foods, and medical monitoring. Technology again replaced evolution. Instead of waiting thousands of years for natural selection to adjust pigmentation, humans solved the problem artificially. Pills replaced sunlight, lotions replaced melanin, clothing replaced skin. This raised a profound question. If technology removes environmental pressure, will skin color ever evolve again? The answer, according to most scientists, is likely no, at least not in the way it once did. Evolution requires pressure, time, and isolation. Modern humans live interconnected lives. We move freely, intermarry widely, and modify environments to suit ourselves. The conditions that once produced white skin no longer exist. In fact, some geneticists suggest the future may move in the opposite direction, not toward uniform whiteness, but toward diversity without meaning. Skin color may remain variable, but socially irrelevant, a cosmetic trait like eye color or hair texture. But culture lags behind science. Despite evidence, skin color still influences perception, opportunity, and identity, not because biology demands it, but because history embedded it into systems. Undoing that takes more than data. It takes time, storytelling, and awareness. This is where the mystery deepens. Why does a trait that evolved for sunlight absorption still carry such emotional weight? The answer lies in memory. Skin color became a container for history, colonialism, slavery, migration, resistance, and survival. It holds stories passed down through generations. Even when the biological explanation is simple, the human experience is not. Understanding how humans became white does not erase those experiences. It contextualizes them. It shows that what was once framed as superiority was, in reality, adaptation to scarcity. Pale skin was not dominance, it was compromise. It traded protection for efficiency. It was survival under constraint, not proof of advancement. This reframing matters. It dismantles myths without denying pain. As science communication improves, more people begin to see skin color differently, not as a hierarchy, but as a map of ancient journeys. Each shade tells a story of climate, migration, and survival. Light skin whispers of long winters and weak suns. Dark skin speaks of blazing skis and relentless radiation. Neither is better. Both are human, and humanity is changing again. Advances in gene editing, medicine, and even cosmetic science introduce new ethical questions. If skin color once changed naturally, what happens when humans can alter it intentionally, not just through cosmetics, but through genetic intervention? Some already do. Skin lightening products remain a massive global industry, driven by lingering colonial beauty standards. At the same time, tanning products sell the opposite fantasy: darkness as health, leisure, and desirability. The irony is striking. Traits once used to divide are now marketed interchangeably. This suggests something important. The power of skin color is fading, not biologically, but symbolically. It still matters, but less than before. Each generation questions it more. Each discovery weakens the old stories. The mystery of how humans became white is no longer about race. It's about understanding adaptation without myth. In this sense, the story comes full circle. Humans left Africa dark-skinned. Some became lighter to survive. Then they told stories about it. Now those stories are being rewritten. Not erased, but clarified. The final truth is simple, yet unsettling. Whiteness was never a goal. It was a response, a temporary solution to a specific problem at a specific time. And like all adaptations, it was never meant to define who we are. As human societies grew more complex, skin color quietly shifted from a biological adaptation into something far more dangerous, a belief system. This transformation did not happen overnight. It unfolded slowly across centuries as humans began to explain the world not through survival and environment, but through stories of meaning, hierarchy, and destiny. Skin color, once merely a response to sunlight, became a symbol, and symbols, when misunderstood, can reshape civilizations. Early civilizations did not classify people by race in the modern sense. Ancient Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Greeks, and Romans noticed differences in appearance, but they did not organize the world around skin color. They cared far more about language, culture, religion, and citizenship. A dark-skinned person could be respected or powerful, and a light-skinned person could be enslaved. Status came from conquest, not complexion. But as Europe entered the late medieval and early modern periods, something changed. Exploration began to redraw the mental map of humanity. Europeans encountered people across Africa, Asia, and the Americas whose appearances differed significantly from their own. These encounters occurred alongside conquest, exploitation, and domination. The need to justify power emerged, and skin color offered a convenient explanation. What had once been an accident of evolution was repurposed as evidence of destiny. The idea slowly formed that lighter skin meant closeness to civilization, intelligence, or divine favor. Darker skin was framed as primitive, dangerous, or inferior. These ideas were not born from science. They were born from fear, greed, and the need to rationalize violence. Biology was twisted to serve empire. Ironically, this misuse of skin color occurred precisely when science still did not understand it. Before genetics, people relied on philosophy, religion, and flawed observation. Thinkers proposed that climate shaped not only skin, but morality. They claimed cold climates bred discipline and intelligence, while hot climates bred laziness or passion. These ideas felt logical to those who wanted them to be true. But they were fiction. The same adaptation that had helped humans survive weak sunlight was now weaponized as proof of superiority. Pale skin, once a vulnerability, was rebranded as strength. The evolutionary trade-offs were ignored. The history of migration was erased. This distortion deepened during the age of colonialism. As European powers expanded across the globe, skin color became a shorthand for power. Laws were written, categories were enforced, entire populations were reduced to color-coded systems. In these systems, whiteness was no longer about adaptation, it was about access. Access to land, access to safety, access to humanity itself. This had profound consequences for how people understood themselves. In colonized societies, lighter skin began to carry social advantage, even among people of the same ancestry. Over generations, this produced internal hierarchies. The ancient biological story of skin color was buried under social conditioning. People forgot that their ancestors' skin tones were shaped by sunlight, not worth. At the same time, Europe itself began to mythologize whiteness. Art, literature, and later photography reinforced a narrow image of beauty and normality. Pale skin became associated with refinement and purity. Darkness was cast as exotic, threatening, or other. These narratives spread globally, carried by education systems, religion, and media. By the 19th century, pseudoscience emerged to formalize these beliefs. Scientists attempted to classify humanity into rigid races. They measured skulls, they cataloged noses, they ranked skin tones. None of this had evolutionary grounding. It was a reflection of cultural bias disguised as objectivity. Yet these ideas stuck. They shaped immigration laws. They justified slavery. They influenced who was considered fully human. The tragedy is that all of this rested on a misunderstanding of evolution. Light skin was not a marker of progress. It was not a step forward. It was simply a solution to a problem: how to survive when the sun is weak. nothing more. But by the time genetics arrived to correct the record, the damage was already done. Even today, the echoes remain. People still ask questions like, how did humans become white? With the assumption that whiteness is a destination rather than a condition. The question itself reflects centuries of misplaced meaning. It suggests a transformation towards something special, rather than a shift towards survival under constraint. In reality, whiteness was never universal, inevitable, or permanent. It emerged independently in different populations. Europeans, East Asians, and some Arctic peoples developed lighter skin through different genetic pathways. This alone destroys the idea of a single white origin or hierarchy. The same environmental pressure produced similar outcomes in unrelated groups. Evolution repeated itself because the problem repeated itself. Low sunlight demanded efficiency. That's all. Yet belief systems are stubborn. Even as modern genetics proves that skin color differences are superficial, societies continue to grapple with their symbolic weight. This is because stories outlive facts. People inherit narratives long before they learn biology. Understanding this is essential to understanding the present. The story of how humans became white is not just about melanin, it's about how humans assign meaning. It shows how easily survival traits can become social weapons. It reveals how ignorance can turn adaptation into ideology. And it forces a difficult realization. If skin color could be misused so completely, what other biological truths have we misunderstood? As science continues to peel back layers of human history, it becomes clear that our species has always struggled to separate what is from what we believe. Skin color is only one example, but it is among the most powerful. Because it is visible. And visibility invites judgment. Yet the deeper truth remains unchanged. Beneath every shade of skin lies the same story of endurance, the same migrations, the same fears, the same hopes. White skin did not emerge to dominate. Dark skin did not emerge to serve. Both emerged to survive. By the time humanity entered the modern age, the biological story of skin color had already been buried under thousands of years of meaning. What began as a quiet evolutionary adjustment had turned into a loud social marker, shaping identities, borders, and destinies. Yet something unprecedented was happening in the background, something that had never occurred at any other point in human history. For the first time, the entire species was becoming connected. Airplanes collapsed distance. The internet collapsed isolation. Migration blurred the lines that climate had once drawn so carefully. People whose ancestors evolved under polar skis now lived near the equator. Descendants of tropical populations were born in northern cities where the sun barely rose in winter. The ancient relationship between skin color and environment was breaking apart. And this created a contradiction. Biology was saying one thing, society was saying another. Modern genetics made the contradiction impossible to ignore. As DNA testing became accessible, millions of people discovered that their ancestry did not match their appearance. Pale-skinned individuals learned they carried African genetic markers. Dark-skinned individuals discovered northern Eurasian lineages. Families realized their histories were far more tangled than any color-based story allowed. The idea of pure skin color collapsed. What scientists emphasized again and again was simple. Skin color is one of the least important traits in the human genome. It tells us almost nothing about intelligence, behavior, or capability. It only tells us how much sunlight our ancestors needed to survive. Yet despite this clarity, emotional resistance remained. Why? Because skin color had become more than biology, it had become memory. It carried the weight of history, injustice, pride, pain, and survival. Even when science explained the origin, it could not instantly dissolve the meaning people had attached to it. This tension defined the modern era. On one hand, humans were more aware than ever that skin color differences were shallow. On the other, those differences still influenced how people were treated, perceived, and valued. The knowledge existed, but the unlearning lagged behind. At the same time, another force entered the story: globalization of beauty. For centuries, lighter skin had been idealized in many cultures due to colonial influence. But now, paradoxically, darker skin was becoming fashionable in others. Tanning industries boomed. Media celebrated bronzed appearances as symbols of health, wealth, and leisure. What had once been a disadvantage in low UV regions was now marketed as desirable. This irony exposed the absurdity of skin color's social power. People were artificially darkening or lightening their skin not for survival, but for status. The same trait that evolution had shaped slowly was now manipulated overnight. The ancient logic of adaptation was completely detached from modern behavior. Technology had rewritten the rules. Sunscreen allowed pale skin to survive intense sunlight. Supplements replaced vitamin D synthesis. Climate-controlled buildings shielded everyone from environmental extremes. Humans no longer needed evolution to protect them. They protected themselves. This raised a profound question. If skin color no longer matters for survival, why does it still matter emotionally? The answer lies in identity. For most of human history, identity was shaped by environment. Where you lived defined who you were. Skin color reflected that. But in the modern world, identity is inherited through stories. People carry the experiences of their ancestors, stories of oppression, resilience, migration, and belonging. Skin color became a symbol of those stories. Understanding how humans became white does not erase that symbolism, but it reframes it. It shows that what many cultures treated as destiny was actually circumstance. It reveals that adaptation was never meant to rank humanity, it was meant to preserve it. This reframing has begun to influence education, media, and storytelling. More documentaries, books, and long-form narratives now explain human pigmentation through evolution rather than ideology. They emphasize migration over hierarchy. They tell the story as a shared journey rather than a divided one. And slowly, perception shifts. Young generations grow up learning that skin color differences are temporary in evolutionary terms, that if humanity survives long enough, new environments could reshape pigmentation again, that what seems permanent is often just a snapshot in time. This realization humbles the idea of race. It places humanity back into nature, subject to forces larger than culture. It reminds us that skin color is not who we are, it is where we have been. At the same time, climate change introduces new uncertainty. As global temperatures rise and UV exposure patterns shift, some scientists wonder whether natural selection could eventually return as a factor. Could increased UV radiation reintroduce pressure on pale-skinned populations? Could vitamin D deficiency decline as sunlight increases in northern regions? Theoretically, yes. But realistically, no. Modern medicine intervenes too quickly. Technology absorbs pressure before biology feels it. The conditions that once shaped skin color over tens of thousands of years no longer exist in isolation. Human evolution has slowed, not because it ended, but because humans outpaced it. This makes the story of skin color uniquely complete. It has a beginning, dark-skinned humans in Africa. A middle, migration and adaptation into lighter tones. And an end, technological liberation from environmental pressure. Yet endings always invite reflection. If skin color no longer defines survival, what defines humanity now? Perhaps the answer lies not in biology, but in understanding, in recognizing that traits we once feared or worshipped are simply responses to circumstance, in learning that difference does not imply distance. The long emergency of survival that shaped skin color is over. But the psychological emergency, the need to assign meaning to difference, continues. The story of how humans became white ultimately becomes a mirror. It reflects our tendency to misunderstand nature, to attach value where none was intended, and to forget that adaptation is not identity. In the final part, the narrative will step back one last time, to ask what this entire journey teaches us about being human, and whether understanding our origins can finally help us move beyond color altogether. When scientists finally pieced together the full explanation of how humans became white, many expected the discovery to close the debate forever. Genetics had spoken. Evolutionary biology had explained the process. The data was clear, repeatable, and overwhelming. And yet the conversation did not end. Instead, it shifted, because the deeper mystery was never only about skin color. It was about why humans needed that story to mean something more. To understand this, we must look at the entire journey of our species. For over 300,000 years, humans lived at the mercy of their environment. Sunlight determined survival. Climate dictated movement. Food scarcity forced innovation. Skin color was one of many adaptations that emerged during this long struggle. It changed slowly, silently, without intention. No human chose to become lighter. No group planned it. It happened because survival demanded efficiency. and then survival stopped demanding it. When agriculture, shelter, clothing, and medicine emerged, biology lost its dominance. Humans stepped outside the rules that governed every other species. We no longer waited for evolution, we engineered solutions. But our minds remained shaped by the old world, where visible traits carried meaning. This mismatch created confusion. Skin color no longer served a biological purpose, but humans continued to treat it as if it did. We inherited instincts meant for a survival-driven world and applied them to a symbolic one. Difference became identity. Adaptation became destiny. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because once you strip away the myths, the story of how humans became white reveals how fragile our assumptions really are. It shows that traits we once considered foundational are, in evolutionary terms, temporary. It reminds us that if climate had shifted differently, the story would have reversed. Pale skin could have vanished instead of emerging. Nothing about whiteness was guaranteed. Even today, scientists note that if humanity were forced back into a purely natural environment, selection pressures would reappear. Skin color could change again, not toward whiteness, but toward whatever best fits survival. The idea that any pigmentation represents an endpoint is an illusion. This realization dissolves hierarchy. It reveals that human differences are not steps on a ladder, but branches on a tree, each shaped by circumstance, not superiority. The same forces that produced pale skin in Europe also produced dark skin in Africa, epicanthic folds in East Asia, and lactose tolerance in pastoral societies. All were responses, none were rankings. Yet history taught otherwise. For centuries, skin color was used to explain power. It became a convenient narrative for domination, exploitation, and exclusion. These narratives embedded themselves into institutions, economies, and identities. Even after science disproved them, their emotional residue remained. This is why understanding the origin of skin color matters. Not because it changes the past, but because it challenges the stories we tell about it. When people learn that white skin evolved due to a lack of sunlight, not intelligence, strength, or destiny, it forces a re-examination of inherited beliefs. It reframes whiteness as vulnerability rather than advantage. It places all humans back into the same evolutionary struggle. Survival did not favor one group, it favored adaptation. The story also exposes something deeper about human psychology. We seek meaning in difference because difference feels threatening. When early humans encountered unfamiliar groups, they needed quick ways to categorize. Skin color became one such shortcut. Over time, shortcuts hardened into identities. But shortcuts are dangerous when they replace understanding. Modern science offers a different lens. It shows that humans are not divided by biology, but united by it. That the same genes responsible for pale skin in Europe appear in different combinations elsewhere. That variation exists within populations, not just between them. This means that skin color tells us almost nothing about who a person is. It tells us where their ancestors lived, nothing more. And yet acknowledging this does not instantly heal centuries of impact. Stories shape behavior long after facts emerge. That is why storytelling matters. That is why long-form narratives exist, to slowly replace old myths with better ones. The story of how humans became white becomes powerful, not because it explains melanin, but because it exposes how humans misunderstand adaptation. It reveals our tendency to turn survival traits into moral judgments. And once you see that, you begin to see similar patterns everywhere. Height, gender roles, physical ability, even intelligence, all have been shaped by environment and circumstance, yet often treated as destiny. Skin color is simply the most visible example. In this sense, the story is not about the past. It is about the present. It asks whether humanity can finally move beyond surface-level difference and recognize shared origin, whether we can accept that variation is natural, temporary, and meaningless outside survival contexts. It challenges us to let go of the idea that biology defines worth. Because if skin color, once considered the ultimate divider, turns out to be a simple environmental response, then what else have we misunderstood? This realization does not diminish identity, it deepens it. People are not erased by learning this story, they are contextualized. Their histories remain real, their experiences remain valid, but the false hierarchies lose their foundation. The mystery dissolves into clarity. Humans did not become white to rise above others. They became white to survive. And now, survival no longer demands it, which leaves humanity with a choice. We can continue to carry old meanings forward, meanings built on misunderstanding, or we can tell a better story, one rooted in evidence, humility, and shared origin. By the time humanity truly understood how skin color formed, the world had already changed beyond recognition. The environment that once shaped melanin distribution no longer controlled daily survival. Artificial light replaced the sun. Buildings replaced shelter-seeking instincts. Medicine replaced evolutionary pressure. The long biological emergency that once forced humans to adapt had ended, but the psychological echoes of that emergency remained. And those echoes still shape the modern world. The realization that humans became white not through superiority, destiny, or divine favor, but through environmental limitation, forces a difficult reckoning. It asks humanity to confront a truth that feels unsettling. Many of the differences we built our identities around were never meant to carry meaning at all. Skin color was a temporary solution to a temporary problem. For tens of thousands of years, humans followed the sun unknowingly. As they moved north, their skin lightened not because they chose it, but because nature demanded efficiency. Melanin slowly disappeared where it became a liability. Survival rewarded those who could absorb more light, synthesize more vitamin D, and reproduce successfully in dim environments. This process was blind. It had no intention. It carried no message. But humans gave it one. As civilizations rose, people forgot the environmental story and replaced it with mythology. Skin color became symbolic, first subtly, then violently. It was used to divide, justify, rank, and control. Entire systems were built on a misunderstanding of biology. The cost of that misunderstanding shaped history. And yet, evolution never cared. From nature's perspective, white skin was not an achievement. It was a compromise. It traded protection for efficiency. It increased vulnerability to sunlight, disease, and environmental stress. In many contexts, it was a disadvantage. This alone dismantles centuries of narrative. When seen through an evolutionary lens, whiteness is not dominance. It is adaptation under constraint. Darkness is not inferiority. It is resilience under intensity. Both are solutions. Neither is identity. As modern humans begin to accept this, a subtle shift occurs. The question changes. Instead of asking, how did humans become white, the more honest question becomes, why did we believe it mattered? The answer lies in fear. Humans fear difference when they do not understand it. Early societies categorized the unfamiliar to feel safe. Over time, these categories hardened. What began as observation became judgment. What began as adaptation became ideology. This pattern did not stop with skin color. History shows the same cycle repeated with language, religion, class, gender, and geography. Skin color was simply the most visible canvas onto which fear was projected. Understanding this reveals something crucial about humanity's future. If skin color lost its biological importance, then its social importance can also fade, but only if humans choose to let it. Science alone cannot erase meaning. Stories must change. And they are changing. Modern storytelling, education, and long-form narratives increasingly emphasize shared origin over division. Genetics is taught earlier. Migration is framed as the norm, not the exception. Human history is no longer told as separate races advancing independently, but as one species responding to different environments. This does not erase cultural identity. It enriches it. People are not less African, European, Asian, or indigenous because skin color is adaptive. They are more human because of it. Their ancestors survived extraordinary conditions. Their bodies carry proof of endurance. In this light, skin color becomes a record, not a label. It records where ancestors lived, what challenges they faced, and how they survived long enough for descendants to exist. It is not a verdict. It is evidence of resilience. Looking forward, humanity stands at a crossroads. Climate change, global migration, and technological dependence are reshaping the relationship between biology and environment once again. While evolution may no longer act on skin color the way it once did, new pressures will emerge: psychological, ecological, and social. The future of humanity will not be shaped by melanin, but by understanding. Understanding that difference does not require hierarchy. Understanding that adaptation is not destiny. understanding that no trait was designed to define worth. If humans can internalize the true story of skin color, it offers a blueprint for unlearning other myths as well. It teaches humility before nature and caution before ideology. It reminds us that survival shaped us, but meaning is something we assign. And meaning can be changed. The story of how humans became white ends not with an answer, but with a realization. We were never meant to stay one way. Humanity is a moving story, written by climate, migration, chance, and choice. Skin color is one chapter, not the whole book. A chapter that lasted long enough to be misunderstood, but not long enough to define who we are. The longest emergency in human history, forced adaptation. The modern era offers something new, reflection. And reflection may be the most important adaptation of all. Because once humans understand that color was never the point, they are free to ask a better question. What kind of species do we want to become now that survival no longer decides for us?